I call the member for Kooyong.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. I follow the very telling and moving words from my colleague and friend, the member for Forrest, who joins many people in this chamber in paying respects following the passing of Nelson Mandela. Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, in life, most heroes are anonymous. But Nelson Mandela was a hero who was far from anonymous. His public struggle for true democracy and freedom in his country of South Africa was one that galvanised supporters around the world. He truly was a great man who, passing at the age 95, has left the world a better place than when he found it. To think that he was imprisoned for 27 years, where his sole job in prison was to break rocks, where he was given one visitor every 6 months, and a man of letters that he was only allowed to write one letter or to receive one letter every 6 months. His eyesight was diminished by the glare of the quarry beneath his cell. And it would have been easy for a man in that position to simply give up the struggle or negotiate his principles away so that he could get out of incarceration. But Nelson Mandela said no to such overtures. Nelson Mandela did his time till he was released in 1990, and from there he became President of South Africa. From prisoner to president, knows no better example than the life and times of Nelson Mandela. And what strikes me about this man's character was his dignity, was his forbearance, was his ability to look beyond the hardship of his years, the nature of his imprisonment, and the attacks which he had to confront throughout his whole life. And despite all of that, he was able to rise above it and to reach out to the white rulers in South Africa and plot a path forward together. And with F.W. de Klerk, who I believe deserves a lot of credit too, a new South Africa was formed without a bullet being fired. Democracy was awakened, and you have a pluralistic country which stands as an example to the world of what can be achieved through the ballot box as opposed to the end of a rifle. I believe that Nelson Mandela is an inspiration to a generation of black and white, of coloured, of humanity in general. And just as I look up on my wall in my office here in Parliament at a portrait of Abraham Lincoln, as a man whose example stands the test of time, so too will the successors to me and my colleagues in this place be talking in 50 or 100 or 150 years' time about the achievements and the life of Nelson Mandela. Because there are not many people in the world who have had that impact, the size and the nature of that impact that Nelson Mandela has had. Now, Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, there was one graphic example of the brilliance of this man, which was the way he inspired his nation to win the 1995 Rugby World Cup. And the fact that he embraced the overwhelmingly white South African rugby team and the way that he led that country off the battlefield while Francois Pinoir and others led it on the battlefield to victory in that World Cup. And we'll never forget that picture of him wearing the cap from the Springboks, wearing the jumper of the Springboks, and leading the rejoicing from the stadium. Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, I want to conclude by saying we do celebrate Nelson Mandela's life. We do understand he was a man, as my friend, the member for Forrest, said, had strengths and, of course, as any person does, human frailties. And we celebrate his contribution to humanity. But we also understand that it is his legacy that must be protected, and we cannot be complacent about the harmony that either may exist today in South Africa or indeed that exists around the world. And as you know, not only was Nelson Mandela an honorary member of the honorary companion of the Order of Australia, but he was also a Nobel Prize winner. And in his acceptance speech, for the Nobel Prize in 1993, he said about the struggle against anti-apartheid, or the struggle against apartheid. He said about the people who got behind that struggle against apartheid the following: these countless human beings, both inside and outside our country, had the nobility of spirit to stand in the path of tyranny and injustice without seeking selfish gain. They recognised that an injury to one is an injury to all, and therefore acted together in defence of justice and a common human decency. I say to you, Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, that that is a paragraph that can be extended far beyond its application to just South Africa and apartheid rule there. So we remember on this day Nelson Mandela. We thank him for his service. We say to the people of South Africa that we, Australia, are with you. We are proud that we played a small role in the anti-apartheid movement, but a significant role. And we look forward to a world in which Mandela's legacy is not only strengthened, but is remembered in the best possible way.